The first impact rattles the garage door hard enough to knock dust off the ceiling rails. The overhead lights sway on their cords. One tube flickers twice, then steadies. I stand under it with the welding mask up, glove still halfway pulled off, staring at the steel sheet I have been stitching over the side door. The fresh weld is still glowing dull orange. Outside, something drags across the corrugated metal and lets out that sound again, that broken animal groan that never goes all the way to a word. "That is the third one this hour," Jess calls from the office loft above me. Her boots creak across the plywood she helped bolt up there. She leans over the railing with the binoculars around her neck and the old 12 gauge resting against the rail. Group on the south fence, moving slow, heads down. I slide the glove off and hang it on the pegboard between the wrenches and the cutting discs. The grinder on the bench is still ticking as it spins down. I wipe grit off my face with the back of my sleeve. "How many?" My voice comes out flatter than I expect. She peers through the dirty glass toward the piles of cars. Her hair is tied back with a length of red cable insulation. Her cheeks have that thin, underfed look most people have now. "Hard to tell through the stacks. 5, maybe 6. More hanging at the road. They hear the generator again." Of course they do. The little diesel coughs once in the back of the garage, then runs steady. I only bring it up for short bursts now. Long enough to charge the battery bank and run the welder, maybe the drill press, and the pump to move water from the old coolant tank into barrels. Every time it comes on, the noise carries over the flattened salt lot, over the fence, into the subdivision where the infection chewed through people in the first week. Noise means life. Life means new attention. I cross to the wall of monitors. The cameras were a luxury before everything fell apart. Wireless, cheap, rated for weather, mounted on poles stuck between crushed hoods. Back when I was just a guy running a junkyard on the edge of town, I used them to catch kids trying to sneak in and strip copper. Now they are the only reason I am still alive. Screen 3 shows the south fence. The chain link is reinforced with cut doors and hoods wired across the inside. Beyond that is the outer ring. 2 layers of cars stacked hood to trunk, welded where I could reach, chained where I could not. Their windows are smashed, their frames bowed, but to the infected, they are a wall of steel and glass that resists clawing hands and teeth. On the grainy picture, I see shapes pushing against it. Gray clothes, hair matted to skin. One of them still wears a bright yellow safety vest from the construction site that used to be across the road. "They're still heading for the gate corner," Jess says. "Same spot as yesterday." "That is where the wind carries the smell," I answer automatically. I have watched this pattern enough times. The breeze sweeps across the open lot from the highway, rolls through the gap where the shipping container does not quite meet the fence, and carries our trace out with it. Sweat, oil, hot metal, boiled rice, canned beans. Every human smell carries on that gap. Every day I tell myself I need to close it. Every day something more urgent breaks. Another impact lands on the garage door. A low one this time, closer to the floor. Something is testing the seam. The door shivers in its tracks, the chain overhead winking with light. I pull the crescent wrench from my belt and hook the manual lock through the rail, then add a second chain and padlock across the handle. We have routines for everything now. Extra layers, extra steps, then one more. "You watch that side," I tell Jess. "I will check the gap. Tell me if the group grows." She makes a sound of acknowledgement and goes back to the binoculars. I grab my jacket from the back of the chair. The denim is stiff with dried mud and metal dust. The 9mm on the pegboard goes into the back of my waistband, worn holster and all. I hate carrying it there, but a belt holster catches on door frames when I move in a hurry, and moving in a hurry is the only way to stay alive out there. At the side door, I rest my ear against the fresh steel plate. There is a faint scrape and a wet noise I do not want to name. The weld at the bottom is still soft. A thin finger of smoke winds up along the jamb. I test the door with my shoulder. The frame holds. The hinges groan. Good enough for now. The infected do not problem solve. They push, pound, tear, and follow sound and motion. If I take away motion and give them something solid to beat against, they lose interest sooner or later. I unlatch the inner bar and slip into the airlock corridor I built out of 2 old truck boxes. On the inside, it still smells of motor oil and long-dried coolant. On the outside, it smells of rust and dust, and that sweet, stale undertone the world picked up once they stopped burying people. I slide the outer hatch open a hand's width and peer into the light. The sky above the yard is pale and washed out. Afternoon. Clouds smeared into thin strips. The car stacks cast long rows of shadow between them, narrow corridors of shade and junk. I move low, keeping hoods between me and the fence. I know this yard the way other men know living rooms and hallways. I laid out most of the stacks myself before the outbreak, and I changed the rest in the weeks after when it became clear fences and security cameras were not enough. A faded blue sedan in the 3rd row has a ladder welded to its frame now. I grip the cold rungs and climb. The steel bites through the fabric of my gloves. Halfway up, a faint breeze brushes my face and brings that smell in again, stronger now. Rot and old rain trapped in fabric. I climb faster. On top of the sedan is a flattened roof welded into a platform. From here I can see the whole south side. The fence line, the stacked cars, the 2 shipping containers that form a kind of choke point around the main gate. Beyond that, the 2-lane road with weeds thick along its broken center line and the row of collapsed townhouses. Figures move along the fence in uneven steps. 6, no, 8 now. One drags a foot. One leans against the steel and smears the metal with something dark. One has no shirt, and the skin on his back is exposed in pale patches, where someone tried to grab him and failed. I shift along the platform until I can see the corner. There is the gap, above the container, where the car stack dips a little and the wind threads itself through. Trash caught there trembles, a strip of plastic, a shredded banner from an old sales event, the corner of a blue tarp. I brace one foot and push against the tarp with a length of rebar, jamming the fabric tighter. It will not fix the scent trail, but it might slow it. I check the road again and freeze. Far down, where the cracked asphalt dips toward the highway, a dust trail rises in a narrow line. It curls slowly, steady. Something with wheels is moving this way. "Jess!" I call, louder than I mean to. My voice skids along the metal and bounces between the stacks. A few heads at the fence snap in my direction. Fingers begin to claw at the steel again. Jess appears at the roofline of the garage, small and tense against the pale sky. She raises the binoculars and scans where I am looking. She does not ask what I see. She has seen that kind of dust too many times. "Pickup truck," she calls after a moment. "Single cab, maybe green. Hard to tell in the glare. Moving fast. There are figures in the bed. People." There is a pause. Living people. I close my eyes for a second. The infected at the fence do not care about the truck yet. They are still busy with the smell of us. That will change when the engine noise gets closer. We have had this discussion before. late at night over canned soup and flat bread and the sputtering glow of the camp lantern. How many do we allow in? How much food we have? Where we put them? How we decide who is safe? I climb down from the platform and land on the gravel. My boots sink a little into the mix of glass shards and sand. The pickup will be here in minutes. The infected at the fence are stirring more now, pressing against the steel, rattling the chain. Their mouths work, teeth scraping where lips used to be. I break into a jog, cutting through the narrow channel between two vans, passing the stripped ambulance that still smells faintly of antiseptic when the sun hits it right. By the time I reach the gate control box, my hands do not want to cooperate. Not from what my chest is doing, but from the thoughts edging in. Open the gate, and the noise and motion will drag every hungry thing within a quarter mile right up against our steel. Do not open the gate, and the people in that truck will be trapped between the dead and my walls. I have seen what happens when drivers hesitate too long at this intersection. Jess drops down the garage ladder and runs toward me. The 12-gauge bangs against her side. Her eyes are wide and sharp, taking in the fence, the cars, the approaching dust. "We cannot take more," she says without preamble. "We have food for maybe 2 weeks if we stretch it. Water we can manage, but food is the limit. You know that." "I also know what happens if we turn people away in front of the others," I answer. I slap the side of the control box. The heavy relay inside clicks. The main gate is still chained shut. I keep the motor disconnected from power for most of the day. Word spreads. Desperate people remember who closed the door. "Desperate people cannot get through 2 layers of cars and steel without tools," she shoots back. "Those things can." She nods at the fence where the infected are beginning to shuffle toward the sound of the approaching engine. Their heads roll in that strange, loose way. One catches its shoulder on a piece of protruding rebar and does not seem to notice. The truck comes into view between 2 crumpled billboards. It is green, or it was at some point under all the dirt. The engine roars and coughs and pushes the vehicle forward in bursts. The front bumper is bent. Someone has welded a plow of scrap plate to it. On the hood, there are old handprints in brown that I force myself not to study closely. In the cab, I see a man hunched over the wheel. His hair is shaved short, his jaw dark with stubble. Next to him, a woman grips the dashboard with one hand and the roof handle with the other. In the bed, 3 shapes cling to the metal. One waves a cloth when they see the junkyard gate and the tall stacks behind it. The sound that reaches us is more than an engine. There are shouts mixed in now. The infected react in a chain. Heads turn. Movement stutters, then shifts. Hands leave the fence and reach toward the road. The sound of bone and skin scraping steel changes direction. A few fall and get up again. The group at the south fence surges toward the gate corner, drawn by the new movement. A few that were hidden in the collapse of a townhouse step into view. I flip the generator switch inside the box. The motor whines to life. Electricity buzzes through cables I pulled from wrecked vans. The gate motor chugs. The big sliding panel shudders but stays in place. The chain is still through the main track. I keep it that way until the last possible moment. Jess grabs my arm. We agreed. We agreed that we take families if we can, I cut in. We agreed that the more people we have, the more eyes we have on the perimeter, the more hands we have on the tools. This yard is big. We cannot hold it with just 2. She looks at my hand on the chain. Her mouth sets in a thin line. She does not argue further. Instead, she racks the 12-gauge, checks the chamber, and runs to the inner platform above the gate where she has a clear shot over the cars. That is our pattern when we do open for someone. One person runs the gate, the other covers. No one stands in the gap. You do not stand in doorways anymore. I wait until the pickup is 20 yards from the gate. The infected are closing in behind it, a loose ring tightening around the moving truck. A woman in a torn dress tries to grab the tailgate and is knocked away by the plow. She hits the asphalt and lies still for a moment, then begins to crawl, fingernails scraping road. "Now!" Jess yells. I yank the chain free and hit the open switch. The gate screams in protest as it rolls aside. Rust flakes fall off the track. The gap widens 5 feet, 8, 10. Long enough for the truck to fit, not enough for too many bodies beside it. I step back behind the thick steel column and press my shoulder into it. The truck lunges through the opening. The driver stomps the gas too hard, and the rear fishtails, slamming into the gate track. The whole assembly shudders. Jess swears under her breath above me. The man corrects, muscles the wheel, and pushes through. In the bed, one of the passengers almost tumbles out, but catches the rail at the last moment. The moment the tailgate clears, I hit the close switch. The motor whines in reverse. The gate drags against the bent track, slower than I want. Infected arms reach through the narrowing gap, fingers clawing at the air. One face appears for a second, eyes cloudy, teeth grinding. Jess fires once, the head snaps back, the body drops away from the opening. The sound echoes off the stacks, louder than I remember from the last time. The gate slams into its housing. I shove the chain back through and lock it, then add a second lock. Habit, always another lock. Only when the metal is secured do I step out into the yard where the truck has rolled to a stop. The man in the cab kills the engine. The sudden absence of its roar leaves the yard full of smaller sounds. The clatter of the infected outside as they throw themselves against the newly closed gate. The rattle of distant sheet metal. The uneven breathing of the newcomers. I stop a dozen feet away from the truck and hold up one hand. "Do not come closer yet," I say. "Stay where you are. Keep your hands where I can see them." My voice sounds like I am talking to someone about overdue bills and lost titles, not life and death. The tone is old habit. The man in the cab nods quickly. His hands are on the steering wheel. He is maybe late 30s, lines around his mouth deeper than they should be. The woman beside him looks mid-30s. She has a bandana tied around her neck and a strip of cloth wound tight over her forearm. That draws my eye immediately. "Injuries?" I ask. "Any bites, scratches, contact with blood in the last 24 hours?" The man shakes his head fast. "No bites," he says. "I swear. The cut on her arm is from broken glass earlier today. We were in the store when a shelf went over. She caught it when she pulled away." He speaks quickly, words tumbling, watching my face for any sign of doubt. "We have kids in the back. We just need somewhere to stop for a while. Just a day. 2 at most." In the bed, 2 small faces peer over the rail. A boy, maybe 10, and a girl a couple of years younger. The boy's cheeks are streaked with dirt. The girl clutches a stuffed dog with one eye missing. Behind them sits another adult, a man with gray in his beard and a thick jacket. He rests a hand on the side of the bed but does not move to stand. His eyes are tired in a way I know too well. "We have a quarantine shed," I say. "You stay there for a day. You do not come near the main garage. We leave you water and food in buckets. You use the drum in the corner. You do not open the door unless we say. After 24 hours, if no one shows symptoms, we talk about longer." The woman swallows. Her eyes flick to the gate where the infected are now slamming their bodies against the steel in random bursts. She can hear the impacts as clearly as I can. "We understand," she says. Her voice shakes but holds. "Anything is better than the road." Jess appears beside me, the 12 gauge still in her hands but pointed at the ground. "We will take the kids first," she says. "One at a time." She looks at me, and I nod. We worked out this procedure after the third group arrived. You separate people, check them visually in full light, make sure no one hides a bite under a sleeve or a pant leg. Too many stories end with kindness and a hidden wound. I guide them across the yard, past towers of twisted bumpers and husks of minivans with missing engines. The quarantine shed is an old school bus I dragged into the far corner with the forklift months ago. I stripped the seats, lined the floor with pallets, and welded bars across the windows. The door only opens from the outside now. There's a small gap for buckets and trays. No one loves it, but it has kept us alive so far. Once the family is inside and the door is locked, I take a step back and listen to the way their voices muffle through the metal. The kids ask questions. The adults answer in low tones. There is a particular cadence families use when they are trying to sound calm for children who understand more than anyone admits. For a moment, that sound fills more space in the yard than the distant impacts at the fence. Jess waits until we are back by the gate before she speaks again. "We just doubled our daily rations," she says, "and we do not know if the food run tomorrow will work. The last strip mall we scouted is empty now, shelves bare, fridges open." "I know," I say quietly. I lean one shoulder against the gate column. The metal is cold through my jacket. "But we also have another driver now. That old guy in the back looks like he knows tools, and 4 more sets of eyes for the walls." I glance at the monitors. The infected outside have settled back into mindless pacing, tracing routes along the fence and between the old concrete dividers. This place only works if we treat it as more than a bunker. It has to be something bigger, a little city, or at least a garage with more than 2 exhausted people. She does not answer right away. Instead, she studies the monitors too. After a moment, she exhales through her nose and nods once. "Fine," she says. "But tomorrow you are the one crawling under the grain store fence if there is trouble. My ribs are still bruised from the last time." We fall into the late afternoon routine. I kill the generator to conserve fuel. The garage hum fades, and the dim battery-powered lights over the workbenches switch on automatically, casting a softer glow across the tools. I log the new arrivals in the notebook on the desk. Date, number of people, supplies they brought, visible injuries. There are already pages of names, some crossed out, some with arrows pointing to new entries. People do not stay long sometimes. They trade, rest, move on. A few never leave and become part of the yard. A few walk out and never come back. Outside, the infected keep up their slow orbit. They bump into fenders, trip over discarded tires, scrape against the cars. When night falls, some will wander off. Others will stand at the fence for hours, staring through the gaps between welded plates at shadows inside. I do not watch them much anymore. If I look too long, I start to think about who they were. The man in the reflective vest, the woman in the torn dress, the kid in the faded band shirt who still turns his head a little when a song plays on the radio in the garage. I am tightening a loose bolt on the crane base when the first real problem of the night arrives. It comes in the form of a groan of metal high above my head, followed by a sharp ping of something under tension going slack. I jerk my head up, The crane arm, a rusted monster I have nursed along for years, lists a few inches to one side. The chain holding the counterweight has slipped another notch through its hook. "Jess," I call. "Crane." She is on the roof again with the binoculars. She moves to the edge and looks down. "If that thing goes, it will take half the east stack with it," she says. "And the east stack is what holds the fence behind it." I already know. I grab the heavy ratchet strap from the hooks by the shop door and start for the ladder welded to the crane base. The rungs are slick with old grease. My boots slip on one and I slam my shin into the metal. A short burst of anger flares and pushes the hesitation aside. There is no time to test the strap twice or to go slow and methodical the way I used to with paying customers' cars. The infected outside are still making noise, but that is background now. The real threat is gravity and poor maintenance. The crane arm swings a few inches as the wind picks up. A stack of 3 cars wired to its reach creaks in sympathy. One bad shift, and the whole assembly will peel away from the support and crash into the fence, flattening the chain link and leaving a gap you could drive a truck through. I reach the top and hook one end of the strap around the main beam. My fingers fumble with the metal latch. I do not trust my grip, so I wrap the strap twice before ratcheting it tight. The fabric bites into my palms as I crank. Every click drags the arm a fraction back toward center. The chain below scrapes in protest. The cars sway less. "You are good," Jess calls up. "Another few turns and it will hold." My shoulders burn with the effort, but I keep going until the strap sings with tension. I test it with my weight. The crane does not shift. Only then do I allow myself a slow breath. I do not let my eyes drift to the horizon. Heights have never been my friend, and the yard looks different from up here. Smaller, more fragile. On my way down, a flash of light catches my eye from the direction of the bus. I pause halfway down the ladder and squint toward the quarantine corner. The small lantern I left outside the bus door is knocked onto its side, casting a crooked cone of light across the gravel. Shadows move inside the bus, sharper and more frantic than before. "Something is going on in quarantine," I say, louder than I mean to. The words echo off the car frames. Jess stops halfway across the roof, turns, and follows my gaze. By the time my boots hit the ground, there is a new sound layered under the dull thuds at the fence. High, ragged cries from inside the bus, the kind you cannot mistake for anything else. Pain, fear, confusion, all knotted together. The kids' voices are in there. So are the adults. I grab the 9mm from my waistband, flick the safety without looking, and force myself to walk, not run, across the yard. Running makes people inside panic more. Panic inside a metal box is never good. Gravel crunches under my boots. The infected outside the fence respond to the sharper voices by throwing themselves harder against the steel. The whole yard feels narrower with every step. At the bus door, I stop just out of reach of the small gap. "It is Mark," I call, using my name out of habit from the old world. "Before everything, you did that to calm people. It still works sometimes. Tell me what is happening, right now." The woman answers. Her voice is strained and thick. "The cut," she says. "The one from the glass. It is worse. She says her head hurts. She is hot. She started shaking a few minutes ago and then went quiet, and now she is not responding." There is a scuffle and a muffled sob. "Please, we did not know." Behind her, the boy cries out a wordless protest. The older man says something soothing, but his tone is hollow. He has heard stories. Everyone has by now. Quick fevers, sudden seizures, The change that comes faster when you do not know if there was contact with someone who already turned. Jess arrives at my shoulder, breathing hard from the run across the yard. She glances at me over the 12 gauge, mind already counting options. Her jaw tightens. "We cannot open that door," she says softly, too low for the people inside to hear. "If she turns in there with them and we are in the doorway, we are done. All of us." I know. The words taste like metal. But if we leave them locked in and she does turn, it will be chaos in there. They will tear each other apart against the walls, and we will still end up having to clear that bus tomorrow, but with more bodies and more infection in a tight space. We both stare at the narrow gap under the door. The lantern flickers, throwing shadows that jump across the dusty bus floor. Someone moves close and presses hands against the interior panels. Fingers scrape against metal. The father's voice comes through again, more urgent now. "Please, please help her. She is just a child." I back up a step, just enough to see Jess's face clearly. "We crack the door 2 inches, I say. We chain it so it cannot open wide. We check who is near. If she is conscious, we talk to her. If she is gone and already coming back, I let the rest hang. We both understand the shape of that." Jess closes her eyes for a second, opens them again, and nods once. "Fine," she says, "but you stand center. I take left. The moment anything moves wrong, I pull the trigger." I move to the latch and slide the first bar back an inch. The metal is cool under my fingers. I loop a short chain through the handle and around the rail, snapping a small lock through the links. The bus door will open no more than a hand's width now. Plenty of room for a barrel, not enough for a body. I nod at Jess. She braces the shotgun against her shoulder. I pull the latch. The door groans and opens that narrow hand's width. The smell that leaks out is a mix of sweat, fear, and old fabric. The lantern inside casts enough light to show a slice of the interior. Pallets on the floor, a heap of blankets. The kid's stuffed dog lying on its side near the wall. The younger girl is not in my line of sight. I crouch and look through the gap. "Move away from the door," I say. "All of you except the father. Father, stay close enough to answer." There is shuffling. The sound of someone pulling the boy back gently. The older man's face appears in the gap. Sweat beads on his forehead. His eyes are fixed on mine. "She is on the floor," he says. "She is not moving." "Describe her," I say. "Skin, mouth, eyes." He swallows. His throat bobs. Skin is pale, lips are cracked, eyes are half open. When I called her name just now, there was no reaction. He hesitates. Every few minutes, her jaw clenches. Teeth grind. That is the only movement. Jess's hands tighten on the shotgun. The stock creaks softly. She does not speak, but I can feel the question from here. How many stories have we heard that start with jaw clenching and teeth grinding? I hate this part. I hated hard decisions even before the dead started walking. Telling someone their car was totaled used to knot my stomach. This makes those days feel like a different planet. "Here are your choices," I say, keeping my voice steady. "We can give it another hour. I will leave the door chained as it is. If she wakes and speaks, if she responds clearly and you are sure, you call out. We check again. Or we can assume the worst now, and I end it through this gap before she rises and hurts someone." I hear Jess suck in a breath beside me. We do not usually say it so bluntly, but there is no good way to soften it. Inside, silence stretches. The father's eyes close. When he opens them again, they look older. "Give us the hour," he says. Please, I need to be certain. If she turns, I will tell you myself. His voice cracks on the last word. I hold his gaze for a long moment, searching for any sign he is hiding something. All I see is a man pushed to a wall by a world that does not care what he decides. Finally, I nod. You have 1 hour, I say. No more. If we hear anything that sounds wrong, we will not wait. I close the door and slam the latch back into place. The lock on the chain keeps it from sealing fully, but that is fine. There is no way anyone can force their way out quickly from inside. Jess and I walk away together, neither of us speaking until we reach the cover of the nearest car stack. You know how this ends, she says quietly. I know how it usually ends, I answer, but usually is not always. I look at my hands. They are steady now, which bothers me more than if they were shaking. It means some part of me has already folded this into the long list of necessary ugliness. We give them the hour, then we do what needs to be done. The night thickens around the yard. I make a circuit of the fence, checking for new damage after the latest round of pounding. The infected do not coordinate, but over time their weight can bend bars and warp panels. At one corner, I find a section where a hood has been knocked loose. I wedge it back into place and hammer a piece of angle iron over the gap. Every fix is a delay, not a permanent solution. Steel holds longer than flesh, that is all. Back in the garage, I fire up the generator again for a short burst to boil water. The family in the bus gets a pot of rice and a few slices of canned meat in the next food drop. I cannot bring myself to reduce their portions yet, even with the uncertainty humming under everything. Jess watches, but does not comment. She is good at picking her battles. The hour crawls. We sit at the workbench with a map spread between us, planning tomorrow's run. A wholesale warehouse near the interstate looks promising on paper, but those big buildings are death traps if the wrong door swings open at the wrong time. The smaller corner stores in town are mostly picked clean. We trace routes with a blunt pencil, calculating how much fuel the trip will cost and how much we might gain in return. Survival has become one long math problem. Gallons versus cans, rounds versus threats, hours of daylight versus distance. Every few minutes, my eyes flick to the clock on the wall. The hands inch forward. The ticking is louder with the generator off. Outside, the infected thin out slowly as some lose interest and drift down the road in search of easier stimulus. A few stubborn ones keep tapping the fence near the gate, drawn by the memory of the truck's arrival. When the hour mark comes, no one has called from the bus. No cries, no new explanations, no hopeful reports. That silence tells me what I need to know even before we cross the yard. Ready? Jess asks, standing beside the rack where we keep the long tools. She selects a steel pry bar and rests it against her shoulder, shotgun still slung. As I will ever be, I say. I take the 9mm and check the magazine by touch. Full, one in the chamber. Safety on for now. My legs feel heavier than they did during the crane climb. That is fine. Forward is still forward. Our footfalls crunch over gravel again. The bus looms at the far edge of the floodlight's reach, painted yellow that looks gray in the half-light. The lantern inside is dimmer now. It casts a sickly glow across the small gap under the door. No voices greet us. No children's questions. Just the distant thumps at the fence and the occasional metallic ping from cooling engines. I tap the door twice with my knuckles. It is time, I say softly. Tell me before I open this. What happened in there? Silence. Then the older man's voice, hoarse and tired. "She went still," he says. Then, 20 minutes ago, her eyes opened again. She did not answer. She reached for her brother. We pulled him away. She moved without looking where she was going, just toward the closest sound. That was enough. His breath hitches. "Do what you need to do." I close my eyes for a heartbeat, open them again, and nod even though he cannot see it. "Everyone back from the door," I say. "All the way to the rear seats. Press yourselves against the windows. Do not move until I say." There is shuffling and muffled whispers as they obey. When I judge they are clear, I slide the latch again and pull the door open that same hand's width. The smell that spills out now is sharper, something sour threaded through the other scents. The lantern light catches a small shape on the floor near the front aisle. The girl lies on her side, eyes open, mouth parted. Her limbs twitch in short, jerky bursts, hands clawing at the air. She turns her head toward the gap slowly, drawn by the motion of the door or the breath I did not realize I let out. Her eyes are cloudy, unfocused. There is no recognition in them. Her fingers flex and scrape against the floor as she drags herself an inch forward. The sound of her nails on the pallet boards is a dry rasp. I raise the pistol. My hand stays steady anyway. I aim for the spot above the eye line, the place we have all learned from hard repetition. Behind me, Jess sets her feet and covers my flank in case anything goes wrong in the split second after. "I am sorry," I say, though I am not sure if I am speaking to her or to the family pressed against the rear windows, or to some part of myself that still remembers handing wrenches to my father in this same yard decades ago. I squeeze the trigger. The shot inside the metal shell is bright and brutal. The girl's body goes still and does not move again. The sound bounces around the bus, leaks out through the gaps, and rolls across the yard. The infected at the fence answer in their own way, with renewed pounding and mindless groans. For a long moment, no one inside or outside speaks. Then the father's voice, small and wrecked, from the back. "Thank you," he whispers. I close the door, snap the latch, and slide the lock back into place. Procedures. Always procedures. They keep you moving when your mind wants to sit down on the gravel and stay there. Jess and I walk back to the garage without talking. There is nothing useful to say that we have not already said too many times. By midnight, the yard is quieter. The infected have thinned to a handful still shuffling along the fence. The generator is off again. The battery lights cast weak halos over the work areas. I lie on the cot in the corner of the office loft, staring at the ceiling beams I installed with my own hands. The sounds of the yard are familiar. The occasional creak of settling metal, the distant cry of something out on the highway, the soft murmur of Jess turning pages in a book on the other cot. For a place built from scrap and stubbornness, it feels more solid than any house I have ever slept in. Sleep does not come quickly. Images queue up in my head. The crane shifting, the girl's eyes, the truck squeezing through the narrow gate with death pressing at its bumper. This fortress is strong, but every day exposes a new weakness. A weld that needs reinforcement. A blind spot in the camera coverage. A rule for newcomers that does not go far enough. Steel is honest. It shows you where it is bending before it breaks. Flesh and minds are less direct. In the gray light before dawn, I get up and pull on my boots while the world is still half quiet. The generator has another hour in it before I need to siphon fuel from something out in the yard. The bus in the quarantine corner is still. No lantern light. Jess joins me for the morning circuit without a word. We check the fence again. Overnight, One of the infected got his arm wedged between two plates and tore it off at the shoulder, trying to pull free. The severed limb dangles there, fingers curled, sleeve flapping in the breeze. I take the long hook and knock it down, then shovel it into the burn barrel we keep for that purpose. Fire deals with what steel cannot contain. At the gate, we climb the inner platform and survey the road. No new vehicles, no fresh dust trails. The subdivision beyond looks exactly the same as it did yesterday and the day before. Empty windows, sagging rooftops, a few bodies caught on porch rails. The infection burned through here fast and then moved on, leaving a shell around us. We let the father and the remaining 3 out of the bus after a second, thorough inspection. Their eyes are hollow, reactions dulled, but their skin is clear and their movements coordinated. No fever, no trembling, no blank stares. I give the father a job immediately, not out of cruelty, but because work is the only thing I have found that keeps people from breaking completely on the first day after a loss. He takes to it with a grim focus, hauling scrap, sorting usable parts, strapping plates to a frame for a new inner gate. The boy follows a few steps behind, carrying smaller pieces with both hands. The woman helps Jess inventory the food and water stores. They speak in low voices. Occasionally, the woman wipes her eyes with the heel of her palm and keeps counting. The little girl's stuffed dog ends up on a shelf in the office, next to the old cash register and the jar of keys that no longer open anything important. I do not know who puts it there. Somehow it feels safer off the floor. By mid-morning, plans for the next run are set. The older man, whose name I finally learn is Harris, volunteers to ride along. He used to drive deliveries for a lumberyard, knows the industrial side of town better than I do. We decide on a route that loops past a feed store, the warehouse, and a smaller grocery on the way back. It is a risk, but so is staying put until the shelves in the garage are empty. This whole life is a long series of calculated risks sandwiched between steel walls. As I fuel the truck from the last of the sealed drums, I glance around the yard. The crane strap holds steady. The gate chain sits solid in its track. The bus in quarantine is empty, but ready for the next terrified group who stumbles up our road. The infected beyond the fence shuffle and moan and reach without purpose. Inside the walls, people move with intent, tightening bolts, stacking cans, loading tools. For all its rust and grime, the junkyard feels more organized than most towns did before the outbreak. I did not plan to become the man running a steel fortress in the middle of a dead world. I was just the guy you called when your transmission slipped or your bumper dragged. But the world did not ask what I wanted. It handed me a yard full of scrap and a choice. Let it become a graveyard or turn it into a barrier between the living and the dead. Every weld, every reinforced panel, every hard decision at the quarantine door is part of that choice. When Harris climbs into the passenger seat and Jess shuts the gate behind us for the morning run, I take one last look at the rows of stacked cars and the garage roof. From the outside, it still looks like a junkyard on the edge of a forgotten road. From the inside, it is something more. It is flawed and creaking and held together by stubborn work. But for now, it stands. As long as it stands, so do we.